Kazaki. Kazaki remains an indelible figure in my childhood memories. 40 years have passed, but Kazaki's image still dances before my eyes. Back then, I was living with my father in a subdivision in Azamgarh. Kazaki was a Parsi by caste. He was cheerful, brave, and full of life. He would bring the mailbag every evening, stay overnight, and leave with the mail the next morning. In the evening, he would bring more mail again. I used to wait for him eagerly all day. As soon as 4 o'clock struck, I would anxiously stand by the road. Before long, I would see Kazaki running toward me from a distance, his spear resting on his shoulder, the bells on it jingling. He was a tall, well-built young man with a dusky complexion. His body was so perfectly sculpted that even the most skilled sculptor would find no flaws. His small mustache suited his handsome face. Upon seeing me, he would start running even faster, and the jingling of his spear would grow louder, while my heart would race with joy. In my excitement, I would run to him, and in a moment, his shoulder would become my throne. That place was heaven to me, where even the dwellers of paradise may not experience the same joy that I found on Kazaki's broad shoulders. As he ran with me on his shoulders, I felt like I was flying on the wings of the wind. Kazaki would reach the post office drenched in sweat, but resting was not in his nature. He would drop the mailbag and take us out to the fields, playing with us, singing folk songs, or telling us stories. He had a repertoire of hundreds of stories about thieves, robbers, fights, and ghosts. Listening to them, I would be captivated by amazement and joy. His thieves and robbers were warriors, who robbed the rich to help the poor, and instead of despising them, I felt admiration. One day, Kazaki was late in bringing the mailbag. The sun had set, and there was no sign of him. I stood on the road, peering into the distance, searching for his familiar figure, straining to hear the pleasant jingling of his spear. As the light faded, so did my hope. Whenever I saw someone approaching, I would ask, "Is Kazaki coming?" But people either ignored me or shook their heads. Suddenly, the familiar jingle reached my ears. I was terrified of the dark so much so that even the sweets kept on the shelf in my mother's room were forbidden to me once night fell. But hearing that sound, I ran toward it. Yes, it was Kazaki. Upon seeing him, my anxiety turned into anger, and I started hitting him, only to stop shortly afterward. Kazaki laughed and said, "If you hit me, I won't give you what I brought for you." I, with a burst of courage, replied, "Go ahead, don't give it. I won't take it anyway." Kazaki chuckled, "If I show it to you, you'll jump into my arms and grab it." Mellowing, I said, "All right, show me. Kazaki, come, sit on my shoulders, and let's go. We are already late, and your father must be angry." I tried to stay tough, "Show me first." Victory was mine. If Kazaki hadn't been afraid of being late, he might have flipped the situation. He showed me something that he had been holding close to his chest, a long face with 2 shining eyes. I rushed forward and grabbed it from his arms. It was a baby deer. How could anyone estimate the joy I felt? Since then, I have passed many tough exams and reached good positions, but never have I felt such happiness again. Holding the fawn in my arms and enjoying its soft touch, I rushed home, forgetting to even ask why Kazaki was so late. I asked, "Where did you find this, Kazaki?" Kazaki replied, "A little way from here, there's a forest with many deer. I always wanted to catch a fawn and give it to you. Today, I saw this baby with a herd of deer. When I ran toward the herd, they all fled, including this little one. But I didn't give up. The rest of the deer ran far away, but this one was left behind, and I caught it. That's why I'm so late." Talking, we reached the post office. My father didn't look at me or the fawn, his eyes were fixed on Kazaki. He scolded him, "Where were you so late today? You are bringing the mailbag now? The post has already gone. What am I supposed to do now? Tell me, where were you this whole time?" Kazaki was silent. Father continued angrily, "It seems you don't want this job anymore. You'll only understand when you are starving to death. Give me the bag and go home. What do I care? You'll find some other work, but I'll have to face the consequences." Kazaki, on the verge of tears, softly said, "Sir, this won't happen again. Father snapped, "Why were you late today? Give me a reason." Kazaki had no answer, and strangely, I couldn't speak either. Father was a man of short temper, perhaps due to the burden of his job. I rarely ever went near him, and he never showed affection toward me either. He spent the entire day in his office, coming home only for 2 short meals. Even on holidays, he stayed in the office, and only my mother knew how to calm his anger, but she couldn't visit him there. In front of me, Kazaki was dismissed. His spear, badge, and turban were all taken from him, and he was ordered to leave the post office immediately. At that moment, I wished I had a kingdom of gold to give to Kazaki, to show my father that dismissing him didn't affect him one bit. Kazaki had been as proud of his badge as a warrior is of his sword. When he took it off, his hands trembled, and tears rolled down his cheeks. And the root of all this turmoil was the delicate creature resting peacefully in my arms, unaware of the havoc it had caused. When Kazaki left, I slowly followed him. At our door, he said, "Go home now, little brother, it's getting late." I stood silently, holding back my tears with all my strength. Kazaki spoke again, "Little brother, I'm not going far. I'll come back, and I'll carry you on my shoulders again. Just because your father took away my job doesn't mean I'll leave you. Go tell your mother Kazaki is leaving, and ask her to forgive me." I ran inside, but instead of telling my mother, I broke down in sobs. She rushed out from the kitchen, worried, and asked, "What happened, son? Who hurt you? Did your father scold you? Stay here, I'll ask him when he comes home. He always hits you for no reason. Don't cry, my dear, don't go near him again." With great effort, I managed to say, "Kazaki." Mother misunderstood and thought Kazaki had hit me. "Let him come home," she said, "I'll have him dismissed on the spot. How dare a mere postman lay a hand on my son? I'll make sure they take his badge and spear away." I quickly clarified, "No, Kazaki didn't hit me. Father fired him, took his badge, spear, and turban." Mother was visibly upset. "That was wrong of your father. Kazaki was always so diligent, and yet he was dismissed?" I explained, "He was late today." Saying this, I set the phone down. There was no fear of it running away inside the house. Mother hadn't noticed it until now. When she saw it hopping around, she gasped and grabbed my hand, worried that this wild animal might harm me. I had been crying, but her reaction made me burst into laughter. Mother asked, "A baby deer? Where did it come from?" I told her the whole story, from start to finish. "Mother, it was running so fast that no one else could have caught it. It was flying like the wind. Kazaki chased it for 5 or 6 hours before he could catch it. No one else in the world could run like Kazaki. That's why he was late, and that's why father fired him, took his badge, spear, and turban. What will he do now? He'll starve to death." Mother asked, "Where is Kazaki?" "Go call him." I replied, "He's standing outside. He asked me to tell you that he's leaving and to ask for your forgiveness." Until now, Mother had taken my story as a joke. She thought father had simply scolded Kazaki. But when I spoke those last words, doubt crept into her mind, and she rushed outside, calling, "Kazaki." But there was no trace of him. I called out too, but Kazaki was gone. I ate my meal, of course. Children don't give up food in morning, especially when there's some rabri, sweet condensed milk, on the table. But late into the night, I lay awake thinking, if I had money, I'd give it all to Kazaki and tell him never to speak to father again. The poor man will starve to death. I wonder if he'll come tomorrow. But why would he? He's been dismissed. Still, he had promised to return. I decided I would share my meal with him the next day. These were the dreams I was spinning when I fell asleep. The next day, I was busy with my fawn, whom I had named Munnu. I introduced him to all my friends and classmates. By the end of the day, he had become so attached to me that he followed me around everywhere. In just that short time, I had given him an important place in my life. I even started imagining a grand future where I would build him his own room, buy him a small bed, and a carriage for taking him on walks. But as evening approached, I left everything and stood by the road, waiting for Kazaki. I knew he had been dismissed and had no reason to return, but for some reason, I still hoped he would come. Suddenly, the thought occurred to me, what if Kazaki was starving? I hurried back home. Mother was lighting the lamps. I quietly took out some flour from the container and, leaving a trail of flour behind me, ran out with the basket in my hands. Standing by the road again, I spotted Kazaki coming toward me, with his spear, badge, turban, and even the mailbag tied to the spear. I ran up to him, clinging to his waist, and asked in astonishment, "Where did you get your badge and spear, Kazaki?" Kazaki lifted me onto his shoulders and said, "That badge was for slavery, my dear. This badge is for my happiness. I used to work for the government, but now I work for you." As he said this, his eyes fell on the basket I had placed nearby. "What's this flour for?" he asked. Embarrassed, I replied, "It's for you. You must be hungry. What did you eat today?" I couldn't see his face, as I was sitting on his shoulders, but I could tell from his voice that his throat was choked with emotion. He said, "What will I do with just dry bread, little brother? There's no salt, lentils, or ghee." I felt terribly ashamed of my mistake. Of course, how could he eat just dry bread? But how was I to bring salt, lentils, and ghee? Mother must be in the kitchen by now. I had barely managed to sneak out the flour. I didn't know at the time that my theft had been discovered. The trail of flour had given me away. But how would I get the other 3 things? If I asked Mother, she would never give them to me. She often made me cry for hours over a single penny, so why would she give me so many things? Suddenly, I remembered something. I had saved some coins in my school bag. I loved collecting coins. I don't know why that habit changed later in life. If I still had that habit, maybe I wouldn't have struggled financially as much. Father never showed me affection, but he gave me plenty of money, perhaps to keep me from bothering him while he worked. He probably found this method the easiest way to get rid of me, as refusing would have made me cry and throw tantrums, which he wanted to avoid. Mother, on the other hand, was the opposite. She had no fear of my tears or tantrums. You could lie in bed all day listening to a child's crying without any disturbance, but the loudest of sounds could break your focus when you were calculating expenses. Mother loved me, of course, but the moment I asked for money, her demeanor changed. I didn't have any books, but I did have a school bag, in which I had carefully folded a few post office forms, pretending they were books. I wondered if my saved coins would be enough for the lentils, salt, and ghee. I couldn't even hold all the coins in my fist. With that thought, I said, "Okay, let me down. I'll get you some lentils and salt. But you'll come every day, right?" Kazaki replied, "If you give me food, why wouldn't I come?" I said, "I'll give you food every day." Kazaki said, "Then I'll come every day." I climbed down from his shoulders and ran to fetch my entire fortune. At that moment, if I had owned the Kohinoor diamond, I would have gladly offered it to Kazaki just to ensure he would come back. Kazaki looked at me in astonishment and asked, "Where did you get this money, little brother?" Proudly, I replied, "It's mine." Kazaki said, "Your mother will scold you. She'll think I tricked you into giving me money. Little brother, you should buy sweets with these coins, and put the flour back in the container." "I won't starve, I have 2 hands." "How can I starve?" I insisted that the money was mine, but Kazaki didn't take it. Instead, he gave me a long ride around, sang songs, and then dropped me home. He even left the basket of flour at the door. As soon as I entered the house, Mother scolded me, "You little thief, where did you take the flour? Are you learning to steal now? Tell me who you gave the flour to, or I'll tan your hide." I was scared stiff. Mother became a lioness when she was angry. I stammered, "I didn't give it to anyone." Mother said, "You didn't take the flour? Look, the whole courtyard is covered in it." I stood there silently. No matter how much she scolded or coaxed me, I didn't say a word. I was petrified, terrified of the punishment I knew was coming. I didn't even have the courage to say, "Why are you so angry?" The flour is still at the door. I felt paralyzed, unable to move, as if my legs had lost the ability to walk. Suddenly, Kazaki called out, "Bahuji, the flour is at the door." Little brother took it to give to me. Upon hearing this, Mother went to the door. She didn't observe further with Kazaki. I don't know what conversation they had, but mother returned with the empty basket, went to the room, and pulled something out from the chest. Then she went back to the door with a closed fist. I couldn't stay there any longer. I followed mother. She called out to Kazaki several times, but he had already left. Bravely, I said, I'll go find him, mother. Mother closed the door and said, where will you go in the dark? He was just here. I told him to wait, but now he's disappeared. He's so shy. He didn't even want to take the flower. I had to forcefully tie it in his cloth. Poor man, I feel so sorry for him. Who knows if he even has anything to eat at home? I wanted to give him some money, but now he's gone. With newfound courage, I confessed to mother the entire story of my theft. Parents can have a far greater impact on their children by speaking to them as equals, as friends, rather than by trying to assert authority. Mother said, why didn't you just ask me? Wouldn't I have given Kazaki a little bit of flour? I didn't answer, but thought to myself, right now you are feeling sorry for him and are ready to give him whatever he needs. But if I had asked, you would have chased me away. Still, I was relieved, knowing that Kazaki wouldn't starve now. Mother would feed him every day, and he would come every day, take me on his shoulders, and give me rides. The next day, I spent all day playing with Munnu. In the evening, I went to stand by the road again. But as darkness fell and the lamps were lit, there was no sign of Kazaki. The streets grew silent, but Kazaki didn't come. Crying, I went home. Mother asked, why are you crying, son? Didn't Kazaki come? I cried even harder. Mother took me in her arms, and I felt her voice quiver as she said, don't cry, son. Tomorrow, I'll send someone to bring Kazaki. I fell asleep crying. As soon as I woke up the next morning, I asked mother to summon Kazaki. Mother replied, someone's already gone to call him, son. He'll be here soon. Happy, I went off to play. I knew mother always kept her word. She had sent a messenger early in the morning. When I returned home around 10, I found out that Kazaki hadn't been at his house. He hadn't gone home the previous night either. His wife was crying, fearing that he had run away. No one can truly understand the tenderness of a child's heart. Children lack the words to express their emotions. They don't even know what it is that's troubling them, what thorn is pricking their heart, why they feel like crying over and over again, or why they can't find any joy in playing. I was in the same state. I would come inside the house, go outside, then wander onto the street. My eyes were always searching for Kazaki. Where had he gone? Had he run away? By the third afternoon, I was standing on the road in a daze when I suddenly saw Kazaki in an alley. Yes, it was Kazaki. I ran toward him, shouting his name, but he disappeared down the alley. I searched the length of the street, but there was no sign of him. When I returned home and told mother, she seemed very worried. For 2 or 3 more days, Kazaki didn't appear. I gradually began to forget him. Children love passionately at first but can be equally indifferent later. They will adore a toy one day and smash it to pieces the next. Another 10 or 12 days passed. It was midday, and father was eating lunch. I was fastening small brass anklets to Munnu's legs when a woman, wailed, entered the courtyard. Her clothes were torn and dirty, but she was a fair and beautiful woman. She asked me, little brother, where is your father? I approached her and, staring at her face, asked, who are you? What are you selling? The woman replied, I'm not selling anything. I've brought lotus seeds for you, little brother. You love lotus seeds, don't you? I looked at the bundle hanging from her hand with curiosity and asked, where did you get them from? Let me see. The woman said, your postman sent them for you, little brother. I jumped with excitement. Kazaki sent them? The woman nodded, and as she began to open the bundle, mother emerged from the kitchen. The woman touched mother's feet. Mother asked, are you Kazaki's wife? The woman lowered her head. Mother asked, what is Kazaki doing these days? The woman broke into tears and said, Bahuji, ever since he brought that flower from your house, he's been sick. He just keeps calling out for little brother. His mind seems lost in thoughts of little brother. He constantly mutters, little brother, and runs to the door. I don't know what's happened to him, Bahuji. One day he said something to me, but then he left, and ever since, he's been hiding in alleys, watching little brother. When little brother saw him, he ran away. He's too shy to come here. I exclaimed, yes, yes. That's what I told you that day, mother. Mother asked, is there enough food at home? The woman replied, yes, Bahuji, we're managing, thanks to your blessings. This morning he got up and went to the pond. I told him not to go outside, that the fresh air would make him worse, but he didn't listen. His legs are so weak, they tremble when he walks. Still, he waded into the pond and plucked these lotus seeds. Then he said, take these to little brother. He loves lotus seeds. Ask how he's doing. I had already opened the bundle and was munching on the seeds. Mother gave me a stern look, but I couldn't wait any longer. Mother said, tell him that everything is fine. I added, tell him little brother has called for him. If he doesn't come, little brother will never speak to him again. By this time, father had finished eating and was wiping his hands and face with a towel. He said, and tell him the master has reinstated him. He should hurry back, or someone else will be hired in his place. The woman gathered her veil and left. Mother called after her, but she didn't stop. Perhaps mother had wanted to give her some money. Mother asked, is he really reinstated? Father replied, why would I lie about it? I submitted the reinstatement report 5 days ago. Mother said, you did the right thing. Father said, it's the best cure for his illness. The next morning, when I woke up, I saw Kazaki approaching, leaning on a stick. He had become very thin and frail. It looked as though the once vibrant tree had withered and dried up. I ran to him and hugged his waist. Kazaki kissed my cheeks and tried to lift me onto his shoulders, but he couldn't. So, like an animal, he got down on his hands and knees, and I climbed onto his back. He carried me to the post office. At that moment, I was overjoyed, and perhaps Kazaki was even happier than I was. Father said, Kazaki, you're reinstated. Don't be late again. Kazaki wept as he fell at my father's feet. But perhaps I wasn't destined to enjoy both joys at once. Having Munnu meant losing Kazaki, and having Kazaki meant losing Munnu in a way that still pains me to this day. Munnu ate from my plate, and he wouldn't eat until I sat down to eat. He loved rice, but it had to be covered in ghee. He slept with me, woke up with me, and was so clean that he would leave the house to relieve himself in the field. He hated dogs, refusing to let them into the house. If he saw a dog, he would jump up from his plate and chase it out of the house. After leaving Kazaki at the post office, I went to have lunch. Munnu sat beside me. I had barely taken a few bites when a large, shaggy dog appeared in the courtyard. As soon as Munnu saw it, he ran after it. The dog, like a frightened mouse, fled. Munnu should have returned then, but to him, that dog was the messenger of death. It wasn't enough for him to chase the dog out of the house, he kept chasing it into the open field beyond. Perhaps Munnu forgot that outside, he didn't hold the same authority he did at home. He had entered a place where the shaggy dog had as much right to be as he did. The dog, sensing that it was now on equal ground, turned on Munnu and clamped down on his neck. Poor Munnu couldn't even cry out. By the time the neighbors raised an alarm, I ran over. I saw Munnu lying dead, with no sign of the dog anywhere. And that is where the story ends.
This story was originally written by Premchand, a legendary author of Hindi literature almost 100 years ago. Do let us know if you like the story. If it so happens that you did not like the story, even then, please let us know your choice so that we can find something you would like to listen. If you like the story, tell your friends as well. If you want to enjoy more stories like these from so many other Indian authors, subscribing the channel would make it easy. Bye for now.